ba'd. So last time we had mentioned a series of a hadith about the adhan. One of them that we talked about was the hadith of Muawiyah, where he said that the Prophet ﷺ said that the ones with the longest necks on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be the mu'adhineen, yani those that made the adhan. We had also talked about the hadith, whenever the adhan is made, then the shaitan, he runs away passing gas, just so he can't hear the adhan. And then when he hears the iqamah, the same thing happens. Then he comes back and he tries to distract everyone from their prayers. And then there's another part of the hadith, where it gets to the point that he distracts a person so much that an individual will forget how much they prayed or what it is that they prayed. So there are a few things here that he talks about, and a few things that he mentions that we had talked about last time, and a lot of it had to do with the fiqh around the adhan. But today I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how to gain focus in the prayer. Because if we know that the shaitan is making this effort, if the shaitan is working to distract us, and it can get to a point where a person doesn't remember how much or what they prayed. Here, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's describing to us a situation where an individual gets to a point where they don't know, in some narrations, how much they prayed, and in other narrations, what they prayed. So what are some things that we can do to kind of regain our focus in the salah and in the prayer?
Just I think a reminder, I try to remind myself that focus.
Okay, so I think
because my mind wanders.
sure, everybody's mind waters, right? I think that's normal. You have other hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that a person will walk away with half of their prayer. Someone else will walk away with a third of their prayer. Someone will walk away with very little of their prayer. But even before all that, I think what's important to keep in mind: do distractions or getting distracted, does that invalidate the prayer? No, it doesn't. And I think that's very important. And why is that important? Because it can become very easy to conflate and to confuse the fact that the moment that I become distracted, it sounds like I'm actually leaving the prayer, right? Because it's okay, I started the prayer, but now that I've stopped paying attention, it sounds like I've left the prayer and it sounds like I've come back. In a normal circumstance, if I'm oh, I remember I'm thirsty during salah, and I get up and I walk away, I drink water, and then I come back, is my prayer valid? Right? Right? In a normal situation, I can't do that. But with thoughts, there's a level of allowance. Why do you think that is?
I think it's natural.
Because it's natural, right? And that's something important to keep in mind. And the reason that I'm emphasizing this is because I don't want us to feel that just because we get distracted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept our prayer. Now, there's a difference here, because someone might ask, okay, well, the Prophet ﷺ, he said you walk away with half, or you walk away a third, or you walk away with very little of the prayer, or none of the prayer. Over here, what is the relationship between these two? In the first instance, what I'm talking about is the acceptance of the prayer. Right? So once I pray, then inshallah that prayer is accepted. And how much of the prayer is accepted? Allah knows. Right? Now, could He accept the whole prayer? He could. Could He accept half of it? He could. Could He accept a third? Could He accept less than that? Absolutely. But what is my obligation? My obligation is to do my best in going and preparing for the salah, in hopes that it is fully accepted. And knowing that, okay, even if I don't get the full reward, I have still fulfilled the obligation. I've fulfilled my duty. And the reason for that, again, is so that we don't lose, we don't want to lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it can become very easy for that. It's oh, well, what is the point of me praying if I'm going to get distracted? Or what is the point of me praying if I constantly think about other things? Because it's okay, right? And not just that, if a person who's distracted, and a person who is constantly making efforts to remind themselves. So let's say that there's someone, when they pray, alhamdulillah, they're not distracted at all. And then you have another person, and he's praying, but he gets a lot of waswasa and a lot of distractions in his prayer, and he's constantly trying. What is going to happen to that person's reward?
The one who's trying?
Right, his reward is going to be more. Right? And why is that? Because the prayer for this person is not a fitna. Right? For this person it's easy. And for this person, prayer is a fitna, it's a test. And he's constantly making that effort, so his reward, inshallah, is going to be more. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tests us with different things. And so, for example, if a person has a problem with alcohol, right? Someone has a substance abuse problem, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children. And there's another person who doesn't have any problem. Like it's not a fitna for him, right? He's not attracted to it, he doesn't want to try it, he doesn't care. And both of these people go into a restaurant. So the person who has no issue with this, and the person who does have issue, again, who gets more reward in this situation? Right, the one who's being tested. And I think sometimes we forget that. There's another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he says that the one who reads وَلَا يَتَأَتَّأ, right? The one who reads and he doesn't stutter in his reading, meaning like he doesn't read slowly, he doesn't have any problems. And versus the one who doesn't, he said, the person who stutters, he will get double the reward. Mm-hmm. Not of the one who reads well, right? The one who reads well, the Prophet ﷺ, he called him al-mahir, right? This person is mahir in the Quran, that he is someone who Allah subhanahu he has a different status. Yeah. But this just goes to show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't overlook efforts, and He doesn't overlook the challenges and the difficulties that we face. Can we close that door? I feel like somebody is constantly speaking. Huh? Oh, somebody's watching something? Oh, okay. We all do. Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. 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 So I think everybody's going to scale in their own way. But what I will say this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He set for us a minimum threshold, right? So the minimum threshold for prayer He set is what? 5 daily prayers, right? The minimum threshold He set for fasting is what? The month of Ramadan. The minimum threshold He set for zakat is, if you have this much money, this is how much you have to pay. The minimum threshold He set for making hajj is at least once in a lifetime, if you're able, right? If you're able. So what is a good way of starting? It's not like, oh, let me make intention for one prayer. My intention should always be for what? For 5 prayers. Now, whether I succeed or not, that's a different conversation. Does that make sense? But I should always start my day with the right intention, because the worst that's going to happen is like, okay, maybe I didn't make them on time, maybe I combined prayers I shouldn't have combined, maybe I got lazy, whatever the case might be. If in that situation, I still have an option to do what? To make them up.
So makeup is like, let's suppose it's Maghrib.
Sure.
And I missed all.
Yeah.
And like now I feel like,
Sure. So now you're obligated to pray them in order. Yeah. So if for example, I went to sleep right before Maghrib and I woke up, right before Fajr, and I wake up at Maghrib time. What did I miss? I missed Fajr, I missed Dhuhr, I missed Asr. And it's Maghrib time now. So what should I do? I pray Fajr, I pray Dhuhr, I pray Asr. Another thing that I think is important to keep in mind is focus on the obligations. So for Fajr, how many am I supposed to pray? 2, right? For Dhuhr, 4. For Asr, 4. For Maghrib, 3. So just focus on those. The baseline we have to develop is the obligations, right? That's the baseline. And once I develop that baseline, it becomes now easier to build on top of that. But if I don't go in with the mindset like, okay, hey, listen, all right, my intention today is to pray my 5 daily prayers. I missed it. I got busy with work. Something happened. Okay, I can definitely feel upset about it. But if if I just sit down and I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad person, what did the shaitan do? He's won, right? He won at that point because now it didn't become about doing the action, it became about who? It became about me. So it's amazing that I made the mistake and now I'm becoming selfish, right? Like in kind of sitting in my own mistake. Like I said, does the door of tawbah and does the door of forgiveness ever close? It doesn't. Well, here, let me ask the question a different way. Does Allah ever close the door? Allah never closes the door. So who closes that door? We do. And if I want to open it, what do? I just make effort, right? I say, yeah, Allah forgive me for this, and I make effort and I step forward. That's it. That's all I have to do. So I think it's important to kind of frame that and to understand that. And when we frame and when we understand that the door of forgiveness is always open, it becomes a lot easier for us to kind of develop that baseline. But I have a few friends who they'll say things like, okay, well, doesn't it make sense to scale people into things, right? Like just like we scale into everything. I was like, listen, there's a minimum requirement for everything, right? If my body requires 2 liters of water a day, can I tell someone like, okay, hey, let's start with 1 spoonful, right? It's like, no, like, hey, listen, if you don't drink this much, you're going to die. And I don't want to say that a person will spiritually die if they don't do these things, because at the end of the day, can a person not pray and still be Muslim? Yeah, 100%, right? A person can. Is it ideal? No, it's not. And it's the same thing. Can I drive my car with three tires and 1 flat tire? I can. Is it a good idea? And it's the same thing here. It's like, why do I want to drive with 1 spiritual flat tire? Like, yeah, I'll get where I'm going, but it's not good for me. It's not good for the car. And it's the same thing here, right? These are things that are not good for our heart. And even the hadith that talks about the difference between shirk and Islam is the salah. What that means is that the moment I stop praying, I've removed the protective barrier, right? That's what that means. It means now the opportunity for me, what happens to it? It increases. Not that it's necessary, but that the opportunity for that increases. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. But like I said, the door of tawbah is always open, right? The door of tawbah is always open. This is a good framing in the sense that, okay, even if my prayer is broken, even if my prayer is distracted, I still get the reward of what? For trying, right? That's what's important. The second thing that's important to keep in mind is like, okay, even if I fall short, even if I miss the window, even if I didn't do it the right way, even if I do this, the door of forgiveness is always open. So that's a nice safety net to fall back onto, to know that, okay, you know what? Yes, I am a piece of garbage, right? Like, yes, I'm a terrible person, but you know what? This terrible person, who am I to dictate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what He accepts and what He rejects, right? I'm not in that position. Allah Azza wa Jalla, that's His decision. That's not mine. Yeah.
What about the level of iman?
Sure. So, listen, Iman goes up, Iman goes down. Can prayer have an effect on a person's Iman?
Yes.
Yes, it can. Here, and this question might, I think it might shock some people, but can prayer have a negative effect on someone? So if it develops resentment, right? So how can prayer develop resentment? Right. So, no, well, it can develop resentment. Number one, if I'm doing it for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And in what space does that usually happen? At home, right? It happens at home, and it happens between what 2 group of people? But why would I do it?
For other people, to
What okay, what other people? And it's not maybe to look religious, maybe not. Between parents and children.
Oh
What are we talking about? Oh, parents. So, but what about the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, order your children to start praying at 7 and discipline them when they turn 10? So how do we balance that? Who's like, when we talk about resentment, who are we talking about? And why does it develop, and how do we develop that? How do we develop that balance? Okay. Sure. So, 100%. So helping them understand why we pray. I think that's something that's very important. So if we talk about the steps of resentment, right? So developing resentment, does it happen overnight? No, right? It takes time. So the question then becomes, is like, all right, well, how do we prevent that resentment? One way of preventing it is instilling those values and helping our children understand why prayer is so important. Like, what else can we do? How else does resentment happen? Right. So when there's only punishment and there are no what? There are no rewards. Right. So if I want someone to do something, I should what? I should incentivize them. And if I don't want them to do something, there should be consequences. Right. But if there are only consequences, what am I going to associate with that action? Consequences only. Right. I'm only going to associate punishments. But if I have that balance, right? If I have that balance, then it becomes actually a very rewarding exercise. And why is it important to have both, though? Right? Because if I only reward someone, is it easy to do away with rewards? Right? In general, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I don't feel like candy today, right? So for example, it's like if we encourage our children, and we'll use the example of candy, it's like, okay, hey, listen, I'm going to give you some Jolly Rancher. For each prayer that you make, I'm going to give you a Jolly Rancher. Well, you know, today I only want one Jolly Rancher. Does that make sense? Versus coming up with a reward and consequence system. And very interestingly, who else deals with us like that? Huh? Oh, your teacher. Huh? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 100%. Right? This is exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with us. When it comes to obligations, what are the incentives for me to do my obligations? It's like, yeah, no, I'm saying the massive rewards, right? Like you're talking about massive spiritual rewards for doing just for doing my 5 daily prayers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has at the minimum gifted me and promised me how much reward? Like 50 times, right? I receive 50 times the reward just for making the prayer. Just for fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, like, for every day that you fast, it distances you from the hellfire, you know, a 3 days journey. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about zakat, it's like this is something that immediately puts out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger, right? So you have these vast, immense rewards. Paradise, right? Just paradise in and of itself. Like, you're given vast land, you're given territory, you're given everything that you could imagine, everything that you want. And that's only the stuff that we actually have the capability to even understand and to grasp. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he describes, he's like, yeah, but in the higher levels of Jannah, it's not even describable. Like, I don't even have the words to describe that experience. Only in the lower levels, I can draw parallels with what we experience in this world. But once you start getting into the higher levels, it's beyond that, right? It's like a blind man trying to describe colors, right? It goes into that space and into that realm. And what about punishments? Not just harsh, like ultimately harsh punishments, right? It's like, for the one that lies, and like there's a hadith about like a person's like, getting clawed with like, a hook. There are hadith about people being skewered. There are hadith about people burning, people drinking, boiled pus. Like it's so foul, right? It's so graphic. And it's like when we think of hellfire, immediately what emotion comes to mind? Right, fear, and what else? What is the other thing? When you think of fire and you think of hooks and you think of all this other stuff, like pain, right? Like there's fear and pain that's associated with that place. And if we think about it, when it comes to discipline, right? When it comes to discipline, what are the disciplinary tools that many parents use? Fear, right? Fear is very common. And now, getting into a discussion around like spanking, is it manageable? Is it okay or not? Nobody's talking about abuse. I'm gonna take that off the table. Like nobody's talking about abuse at all. Now, is spanking that? Yeah, in many places, like even states, like even legally. What is the problem though? How come spanking isn't spoken about in the public sphere? Not just it can get to, what happens? In the courtroom, it's like, oh yeah, I spanked my child. What immediately, what is that going to translate to?
Oh, he's abusive.
Right, because spanking equals abuse. I disciplined my child. Immediately that is equated to abuse. Now, is there a fine line between them? Yeah, there is, and I think it's very difficult in maybe even judicial settings to kind of figure out what that difference is for some judges. I think there are some judges who actually have a very clear idea of what that means and what that entails. But at the end of the day, having rewards and having consequences it creates a nice barrier, right? It creates a nice incentive on both sides, right? It creates an incentive to perform something, and it also creates an incentive to stay away from other things. Even driving. How come more people don't speed? So I'm saying these are consequences. What are the rewards of me following the law?
You don't get a ticket. That's a reward.
Huh?
Better insurance.
Better insurance, right? That's very important, right? That's very important. Okay, well, why do even when we get speeding tickets or we get other types of tickets, what is the first thing that we worry about? Insurance rates, right? That's the first thing. Was like, oh man, I hope my insurance doesn't go up. So even in a worldly sense, like the government doesn't reward us, right? It doesn't reward us. It doesn't do that for us. But rewards come in other ways, in other spaces. And it's important, again, our minds as humans, this is how we function. Like we want to be incentivized to do things, and we want to be incentivized against doing things. And the same thing here. So what can I do for myself? We already talked about a couple things, right? We talked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever forgiving. We know that as long as we're making the effort, inshallah, the effort is accepted. Like I don't need to keep repeating my prayers. Every time, imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had obligated every moment of distraction I have in prayer, I have to start my prayer again. What would happen? People just stop praying, right? It's just like, yo, this is ridiculous. I can't, I can't get through this prayer. This is not reasonable. So the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in knowing and understanding His creation, and that, okay, there is this room for error, and that even with the room for error, it is still something that's reasonable and still something that's healthy. What else can I do to motivate myself? Just about anything.
I try to be here. That motivates me. I try to be in the masjid.
Okay. Why the masjid though?
I usually miss prayers at home.
Okay. So in the masjid, there is an environment that encourages prayer. So being in an environment that is encouraging of that action, it definitely helps, right? So if I spent my entire days and evenings in a hookah lounge, eventually what's going to happen? Right. Not just my lungs. Yeah, that's definitely right. And my clothes are gonna stink. But like, eventually, I'm gonna be tempted to do what? Right. I'm gonna be tempted to smoke myself. So whatever environment I surround myself in, the effect that that environment has on me, it's definitely there. So being in a good environment that is encouraging of prayer. Have you guys ever been to a masjid that is pretty dead during the week? So like you go for like Dhuhr and nobody's there, not even the imam. Right. Yeah, so no, it's like I lived in a town in like rural Virginia, and like Monday through Thursday, like nobody came for Lohan Nasa. It was literally just me. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, like and it is like, and if a long-term exposure in that environment can actually be very discouraging, right? Yeah. No, because you're like, yo, I cannot be the only one in this town. Like, I can't be the only one in the town who prays awesome prayer, right? So, but having a good environment. Like, what else can we do? Okay. Being regimented, right? It's really, really important to be organized, right? So if I don't have regiment and if I don't have order, does Islam encourage that?
Isn't it like the most disciplined religion?
It is, right? There's a lot of things that we're expected to do, and when I have a number of responsibilities, what is the best way for me to manage those responsibilities? By organizing them. So if I'm not organized, I'm not going to be able to fulfill said responsibilities. And not just that, it's like, well, someone might say, oh, okay, well, Dhuhr has a window, right? So the Dhuhr window starts at like 12:10, it finishes at like, 3 o'clock or something. So from 12 to 3, I can pray in that entire time, correct? So how come I can't pray at like 12:30 one day and then 1:30 the next day and then back to 12:45? Right, I can do that. That's fine. But why is it important to be regimented? Because the moment I regiment it, I'm prioritizing it. And if something is important to me, what am I going to do? I'm going to put it in my calendar, right? Like I'm going to make it like, because the moment I put it in my calendar or the moment I fix it, okay, hey, 1 o'clock every day I'm going to pray Dhuhr, for example. What is the advantage of that? Sure. So now it's something that's habitual. And not just that, if I have it in my mental schedule or in my physical schedule, what can I do? I can plan around it. Right? That's what's important. So whether it be meetings, whether it be outings, whether it be it's like, okay, hey, listen, yeah, what are you doing at 1 o'clock tomorrow? No, I'm sorry, man. 1 o'clock I'm busy, but it's like, what about 1:15? Yeah. I'm saying making exceptions is fine, right? There are always going to be exceptional things. What is the problem with exceptions? When it becomes the norm, right? Because now it's like, okay, if the exceptions are happening 5 out of 6 times, it is no longer an exception. Now that is the new norm, and whatever the exceptions are, I'm giving those priority over what I had scheduled, right? So scheduling myself, and this is important with everything and anything. Why is it that immediately after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, what is one of the first things that the companions began doing? They compiled the Quran. Like, why did they do that? Right, to have a unified, universal reference point. And immediately after it was compiled, what is one of the first things that they did? They said, okay, they came up with reading schedules. Even when the Prophet ﷺ first migrated to Medina, the hadith we just took, what is the first thing that the companions asked for? Or one of the first things, I should say. They asked for an adhan. Why? Right, so they're like, okay, hey, listen, it doesn't make sense to just, like, there's no way for all of us to know when the prayer, when they're going to pray in the masjid. And now that we have an opportunity to congregate, we need some kind of system to what? To do that. So having that system is something that is fundamentally important. Yeah.
So was there a week rule? Was it like
No, you had asked me. I had sent you the hadith. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was not clear that
So
was something.
anytime the Prophet ﷺ commands something, ما ينطق عن الهوى, right? So there are two things. The Prophet ﷺ, if he says something, what are the two possibilities? It's revelation, right? That's one possibility. What is the second possibility? Right? He's making his own ijtihad, and he did it himself. طيب, how do we know that that ijtihad is right or wrong? He's divinely inspired, so meaning that if he says something wrong or he did something wrong or he made a mistaken ruling, what is going to happen? He'll be corrected. And how does the correction come? One, revelation is one, and what is the other? There's another type of inspiration that happens as well. He's corrected by the companions. Example. The Prophet ﷺ, it was either Dhuhr or Asr, I don't remember. He went and he prayed. Huh? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to meet the Prophet ﷺ. But so he ﷺ, he was praying and he prayed 2 rak'ah and he did taslim. He gave salam. And he turned around and a man called Dhul Yadayn, he was like, Ya Rasulullah, has the prayer been shortened or did you forget? So the Prophet ﷺ, he responded and he's like, the prayer hasn't been shortened and I didn't forget. No. This was in Medina. So then he saw everybody talking to each other. Like he saw the companions like, I think he forgot, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he's like, Malikum. He's like, what's wrong with you guys? Is what Dhul Yadayn said correct? And the companions were like yeah. Like you did shorten it. So what did he ﷺ do? He stood up, he did takbir, he completed the prayer, and he did what? This is where, very famously, what do we learn about prayer? Sahu, sajda sahu, right? So the prostration of forgetfulness, it came from this hadith. And it wasn't Allah who inspired him. Who corrected him? The companions. And even the correction, what did we learn? We learned what to do when an individual makes a mistake during prayer. So yes, 100%, right? So even when the Prophet ﷺ makes a mistake, it can be argued that there's a reason for it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can argue that he actually didn't forget, but Allah made him forget, right? Because there was a lesson that was meant to be taught. But the point being, regardless of that, if the Prophet ﷺ said or did something mistakenly, immediately what is going to happen? Either Allah is going to correct him, or there's going to be some type of outside correction that happens. And there can be no delay in that. It is something that has to be done immediately, meaning that it's not possible that the Prophet ﷺ does something and like a year or two later, it was like, oh yeah, that was, it was actually supposed to be like this. And why is that? There's a principle in Islam, it's called لا يجوز التأخير عن وقت الحاجة. That it is not permitted for something that has immediacy to be delayed. Meaning that when it comes for the prophetic messaging, it is with urgency and it is with immediacy. And that it cannot be mistaken. And if it is, what's going to happen? It will be immediately corrected. Does that make sense? So even in these situations where he made a mistake or something happened, all of those were always corrected. And again, that's something that's important to keep in mind, inshallah, when we're talking about this. So we know that if a mistake is made, that mistake can also be corrected. This is another way of us having hope in our prayers. What else can we do to stay focused? We didn't finish the resentment conversation. So, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. So when we talked about that there can reach a point where children resent prayer. And we said that one of the reasons for that is if we only give consequences for those prayers and we don't have any incentives, because the only thing they'll ever associate with prayer is consequences and negativity. What is another thing that causes them to resent prayer, or possibly? No, so we had said that, right? So if I don't have consequences and there's only reward, what's going to happen? It doesn't matter. Like they might not feel like getting the reward for that particular prayer. So like the example we gave was like, okay, if I give a Jolly Rancher for every prayer, and they'll be like, you know what, today I'm good with one Jolly Rancher. I'm sorry? That's fine. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, for example, if I said that, hey, well, why do you pray? Because I'm afraid of the hellfire. That's one motivation. If someone says, ask someone else, why do you pray? It's like, oh, I want paradise. Well, that's it? Yeah, I just want the reward. And he does not mention the hellfire at all. Does it matter at that point? No, it doesn't. So it's the same thing here. It's not about what the individual motivations are. It's the fact that we have both mechanisms in place. Does that make sense? Right, so I have to have a reward and I have to have a consequence mechanism there. Now, whether the child chooses one or the other is irrelevant. Right? It's like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, or I really want that candy. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that I create a system in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. The resentment doesn't happen. What other reasons would a child become resentful? We said that explaining to them, that's something that's really important, right? Giving the reasoning behind it, trying to instill that love of prayer, having a consequence and reward system. What else? Right, 100%. Like if I'm like, hey, you need to pray, and it's like, hey, yeah, dad doesn't pray, right? So over here, mixed signaling, right? This is a huge problem, right? And it can be a problem, 100%. There's a lot of resentment that can come from mixed signaling. What else? Sure, inconsistency, right? So that very much aligns with mixed messaging, right? So if there's inconsistency, it's like, okay, you keep enforcing this importance on me, but you don't enforce that importance on yourself.
I guess does it go in the consequence section? Because I think like when I was a kid, I would just pray because my parents, like they would make me pray.
Sure.
But then I had to, understand why am I praying. So like
Yeah.
it takes that time to realize that.
Sure, but so here, am I going to explain love of prayer to my 5-year-old the way that I would my 13-year-old? Right, so the messaging has to scale too, right? And I think that's something that's important. The other thing though that I think that you touched on is if the consequences are extra, right? If the punishment doesn't match the crime, what happens? Right? Then it becomes unjust. And with a child or even an adult, if a punishment becomes unjust, what happens? We try to what? We try to circumvent. And even we do it, right? So if we're like, yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous, right? If that's the punishment for that, yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. Either everybody will start ignoring the crime, right? Or what's going to, like, for example, is like, what is one of the, I would say, biggest avoidances in New York City? What are people notorious for not doing? Paying what? Paying parking tickets, right? Notoriously. Why? Why not? Well, there are penalties, right? So the consequences are limited. What is the other problem? It's not just a lot of people. That's fine. There's a lot of people still pay rent, right? If rent wasn't reasonable, people would be like, oh, we're not paying rent anymore. Right? It's not reasonable. They think it's what? Essentially, I'm not paying that ticket. Why? Because I think it's unfair. Remember? Like, again, it has to go with this justice. So if one of my children misses a prayer and I'm like, no Wi-Fi for a month.
I mean, I feel like the moment the kid has an out,
Yeah.
gets older, he's like, this is Islam. This is what.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, again, because he's going to associate what with the prayer now?
Punishment, yeah.
The punishment is if we only punished. Injustice. I'm sorry? Yeah. Well, I mean, you could argue Mossad infiltration. But anyway, like, they're the ones inciting the riots. But I love this class. But there's if you associate injustice, right? There's one with associating only consequences, and there's one in associating it with injustice, right? In both of these, you're going to have negative outcomes, and again, you're going to build that resentment. So these are some of the steps, inshallah, we can try avoiding when it comes to anything, right? It doesn't have to be prayer in and of itself, but it can be many things in our own lives. It's like, okay, well, how do we actively encourage our children to do this, or actively encourage them to stay away from this? Have a meaningful reward and punishment system. How do I develop that? How do I know my reward is okay and my punishment is okay? Okay, so what can I do? Okay, what do I do with that? How do I, that information is really important, because the thing is, rewards and punishments, they can start earlier. Right now, like, so I have a 1.5-year-old. Can I come up with a meaningful or like reward and punishment system at that age? Kind of, right? You can start one, right? Right, it's going to be very light, because why is that? How come I can't be consistent and strict with that? Because that's it. They don't have comprehension, right? They don't have full comprehension. Are there moments where they might comprehend certain things? Yeah, 100%. But can I consistently expect from them to comprehend and understand? No, I can't. This is why they are children. Just because my daughter cut her hand on something, or she burned her hand on something, can I trust her not to do that again? No. Even though what? Even though there's pain and fear that's associated with that, right? It's a very visceral reaction to those things. Like, so when can I have a consistent, meaningful reward and punishment system? Around what age? 7, 8. Right, I would say around 7. Right, so around 7, maybe even a little bit earlier, depending on the child. 6, 7? No? Don't do it here. Is that boomer humor? I'm definitely not. So I think even my kids aged out of it. Maybe my youngest, she might still be my 12-year-old. I think she's still on the cusp. But I think that around that age, and why is that important? Because at this point, I would say, for me, when somebody asks, like how do you set that differentiation? If I send a 5-year-old, be like, hey, listen, go get me a glass of water, how much can I trust him or her to actually come back with it? Maybe, right? You know, I would say it's 50-50. Like, you know, get distracted, start playing with the cat, or like, you know what I mean? Like, or like start playing with their toys or whatever. But when a child turns 7, what are the chances now of me trusting him or her to come back? They're like very high. So I think once there's a level of comprehension there, I can now start implementing a system that is more meaningful. And you mentioned something really important. Now that I have the child, how they receive it, what is the easy way for me to start easing into that system? Right, talking, right? That's it. Just having a conversation. Hey, well, what do you did this? What do you think is a good punishment? Now, is it possible that the child acts very silly and says, "Oh, to buy me ice cream"? Like, how do I respond to that?
As a reward.
No, as a punishment.
This is good. No ice cream.
No ice cream.
Hmm?
Like
No.
that's a reward.
Well, it's like just
No. At that point, then you're very honest with the child and be like, I gave you an opportunity, and you know that's not an appropriate punishment. You've now lost my trust, and I'm going to be giving the punishment. And no ice cream for the rest of your life. No ice cream until you're married. No ice cream until you're married. Right, motivation for them to get married. Right. So I.
it's like that level of
Yeah.
trust is like I think kids I find like they love responsibility. They want to do things like no
they want to be adults, right?
Try exactly.
I'm saying like when we were kids, we always tried so hard to be adults, right? And now that we're adults, we act like oh no, that's just me.
That's true. That's true. No, that's true.
I think it's only guys. but I will say it's like I think learning because even with that we're actually trying to develop like a trust mechanism and helping them understand because the moment that if I respond it's like okay well you lost my trust, how is that 7-year-old going to take that? It's going to be devastating. And but next time that conversation comes up, what's going to happen? He's going to come right. Again, even in that conversation, you know, learning how to develop and learning how to build these boundaries is something that's really important because we want to earn that trust. Even after all of this, is it possible that a child will resent the prayer? Yeah, it is. Right? You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yahdi man yasha. He guides whoever He wills. Our job is to what? Is to set meaningful, healthy boundaries with them, with ourselves, so that we don't fall into spaces of abuse, and whatever it is that we do is appreciated.
We have a quick question. You know, if it's something like sidetrack, we don't talk about it, but
Yeah.
how do you ensure that you're kind of checking and balancing like yourself and making sure you're not acting like that friend,
Sure.
more so of someone that you know they respect and says, okay, we can have a cordial relationship,
Sure.
but when it's time to do something, it's got to get done.
Yeah.
As opposed to being a friend,
Okay.
respecting, kind of.
So I think there's always going to be a check in the relationship itself. Like you're going to start noticing things. It's like, okay, I don't feel like I'm being respected. Like that's usually becomes very clear. And if I need more methods and techniques, obviously I can't engage my son anymore, right? Like because that respect is lost, now I have to recalibrate and develop that trust again. So I can't talk to him. Who do I talk to? No, you go talk to somebody who's more senior, right? Or you talk to somebody maybe who specializes in parenting, or somebody who can give advice about parenting, right? That's it. It's just seeking. Everything is seeking advice, right? Everything is seeking advice because it's through that. It's like, okay, hey, listen, let me talk to 2 or 3 other parents. Like, hey, how do you guys deal with this? And why doesn't that happen more in communities?
Maybe they don't want.
Shame. You had it. You were about to say it. You know, it's 100% shame because the moment that I become vulnerable about me having a problem with my son or my daughter, what happens?
People look at you a different way.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Like, I don't think most people care enough about me and what's going on in my life because they have so much going on in theirs, right? Right? It's the fear of exposure. Be like, oh, okay, man, maybe I'm the only one that what? That is going through it and has a problem with my son or daughter. And that it reflects a deficiency in right? And nobody wants to admit to that. Right? There's a level of humility that's required when we engage in that. Like, you guys didn't mention another tool to help stay focused in prayer, but it's something that's very powerful that we overlooked. Huh? All right, istighfar. Istighfar, expand on that a little bit. I'm saying istighfar is good. I'm saying, but there's a broader category that falls under. Dua. Right, that's what istighfar is. Istighfar is what? Is making dua for Allah to what? To forgive. And making dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, make me firm in my prayer. Ya Allah, give me insight in my prayer. Ya Allah, make the prayer attractive and beautiful to me. Ya Allah, put enjoyment of the prayer in my heart. Right, these are very easy ways, and they're very spiritual engagements with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of the stuff you guys mentioned, very practical, right? Like, you know, making it timely, making sure it's in my schedule. And that's an easy way for me to show importance for that. What else? Before, during, after?
Just like, I guess, giving yourself some time. You know, you're not rushing to make the salah. You know, you actually like relax, sit down.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of like in that headspace.
Okay, so mentally prepare for entering the prayer. Like, how did the fuqaha describe that? How was this done for them? So the scholars of fiqh, they have a very important chapter concerning this. What do they say? They say that before a person enters their prayer, they should what? They should make intention, right? Not just that, they say they should vocalize their intention, like they should verbalize that intention. What is the purpose of that? Well, the Prophet ﷺ, we don't have any hadith that he did it. Why are they mentioning it? That's it. It's just to center you, right? It's to center you. It's just to focus on like, okay, hey, I'm about to enter, and reminding myself, hey, I'm about to enter a state of prayer, and this, so that this can bring some calm and it can bring some peace to the heart. But inshallah, I think these are, we mentioned like maybe half a dozen different ways to kind of stay focused. Learning the meanings of prayer, that's something that's really important too. Any surahs that I regularly recite, learning what those surahs mean, right? These are very easy ways for us to engage in the prayer. Learning the different adhkar of prayer and what they mean. These are all very easy ways of engaging from it. Also remembering, what does the prayer do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He assigns different benefits to different actions. And for the prayer, He says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, that the prayer actually protects you from evil and vile actions. So if I want that protection, what do? I pray. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Inshallah, the tazkiyah class will be after salah. So I'll see you guys then. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin. Nabiyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi.
No way. Is this real?
You got promoted to number 2?
You went from 5 to 6. That's a big jump. There's no way that